I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. EdCast recently visited the Department of Education in the Tweed Courthouse to speak with New York City Schools Chancellor Carmen Fariña. She's an experienced and esteemed educator who has been leading the nation's largest school system with over 1.1 million students since January 2014. Prior to taking the helm at the DOE, she's been a teacher, principal, superintendent, and deputy chancellor. Since her appointment, the department has undertaken a number of initiatives designed to ensure that students receive a quality education. Our in-depth personal interview with Chancellor Carmen Fariña is up next. It is my pleasure to welcome Chancellor Carmen Fariña to EdCast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, one of the signature initiatives of this administration has been equity and excellence, which I believe the mayor announced in 2015. It consists of rigorous reform components, and we'd like to kind of get a sense from where are we right now in some of the various aspects of that initiative.
Well, I think we're in a very good place. First and foremost, for equity, for me, means that no matter where you live in the city, no matter what zip code you're in, you're going to have access to the best principals, the best teachers, and the best programs. So one of the things that we have done very specifically starting 3 years ago, added professional development in every single school in the city. So you're not going to get it if you're only on the Upper East Side. No matter where you are in the system, you're going to have access to PD, and you're also going to have access to all the materials that we've created to make that better.
And that's, that's for the teachers.
That's for the teachers. And also, pre-K is one of the other examples that, you know, at some point, if my children went to school when they were 2.5 years old, every 4-year-old in the city now has access to the same universal pre-K. What I don't think a lot of people realize, the curriculum is the same in all our pre-Ks, whether they're in the Bronx, Manhattan, or Queens. And that curriculum is very much focused on interactive learning. It's based on talking.
Any play?
Of course. Corners, centers, go into a school. I see the kids playing with water. To me, that's a sign of a good, successful pre-K, but also early literacy. And all our pre-K programs have a very strong emphasis on parent engagement and parent workshops. So that's part of the equity. The equity issue is also making sure that no matter where you are in the city, that when we talk about college for all, the notion that college is important, the discussion starts in kindergarten. And at one point, I don't think there were high enough expectations for all our kids. So certain topics weren't mentioned. Well, you know, my kids may not. I don't want to hear that anywhere. It's all our kids will. So, for example, January 11th, we're having a College Awareness Day citywide. And we expect every teacher in every school to be talking about the college they graduated from, why they went to college, what they did in college. So I think those are some of the important equity issues that we put forth.
One of the aspects of this I know is that middle schoolers are visiting colleges. Has that been taking place already?
Yes, it started last year.
What are some of the reactions of that age group when they go to visit
Well, I can tell you one
college?
of the groups I went with is the middle school from the Bronx, and they went to visit John Jay Community College. And when they went, these are the takeaways. First and foremost, the fact that the cafeteria lets you choose your own food, that they had a swimming pool, which they were really shocked that a college would have a swimming pool, that they had clubs they could join. They don't think of college as clubs. And then how intense the kids were in their classes studies, that when they went into the classrooms, nobody looked up at them. They all went on working. And I think that's really an important way to introduce them to college, because it is about a combination of work and play. And adults, and treating you a little bit more like adults. So I think those are the kind of pushback, not the pushback, the positive.
You also, of course, are pushing for computer science for all. How is that coming along?
It's coming along very well. This year we did a lot of training of our teachers, because obviously many teachers are not proficient in that area yet, so we had to get that going first. And all our summer training involves some form of computer science. Our STEM programs, we had over 1,000 teachers that we trained this summer. We had schools that are designated computer science for all in its entirety. The first day of school, I went to visit a school where the third graders were doing computer science, not using an actual computer. I think that's something that not all parents understand. Computer science is a way of thinking.
You know, you said at a talk that computer science is more than just about a computer. What did you mean by that?
I mean that we have to start even in kindergarten or pre-K using Legos, because Legos are a form of computers. It's dot and dash that you do in the early grades. It's about using analogies. The third grade that I went to visit was using charts on the floors to see how do they do algorithms. So I think this notion that every parent thinks, oh, they have a computer on their desk. No, it's about how to think logically, how to think critically, and how to get engaged in creating new knowledge, which is what computer science is all about. Robotics is computer science.
Will
too.
there be some emphasis on coding for, I know, for girls and for African American children? The studies show they use their smartphones a lot, but they don't code very much.
Well, I think we're obviously doing coding with everyone, but as one of the students said to me in the summer program, he says, you know, Chancellor, do you understand what Python is? Do you understand what coding is? Kids know a lot more than we give them credit for. So I think using that innate interest in technology is important. But I think the other piece of this is also making sure that all the professional development makes all teachers teachers of technology. Because if whether you're in a social studies class, a science class, all of you should be using some form of technology. And science in particular, and math. I went to visit a middle school where all the math work is being done through the computers. So I think this is part of what we want to see more of and integrate it into all part of school life.
Another big goal was second grade literacy for everyone. I mean, by second grade, everyone should be reading. Can you tell me what the methodology used, what kind of methodology is being used? That's one thing people always ask me. Why is there so much discussion on teaching children how to read? Don't we know how to do it? What's the methodology being used
I think
here?
we know how to do it, but we kind of let it go by the wayside over the last few years. I believe that starting in kindergarten and even in pre-K, we need to start teaching phonics and phonemic awareness. We can't have kids make up for what they never learned in the first place. So I think that's part of what we certainly put into all our schools, that it has to be taught explicitly and directly. The other thing is that within a range in a first grade, you're going to have a range. You have students who are reading chapter books. You have students who still don't know the alphabet. So how do you differentiate in the classroom to make sure you're meeting the needs? And particularly when you have special education students, you have English language learners. So how do we approach them? What we know and research shows us that if you're not on grade level by the end of second grade, when you enter third grade, you fall 6 months behind every year thereafter. We can't let that happen. We need to make sure not only that students know how to read enough to take a test, but learn to love reading. And there's a difference. And by second grade, you should really be dying to go to the library and take out a book.
Are the second graders being exposed to both digital and print text, or just print?
I would say it's still more print. And you know, I started using my Kindle several years ago. I gave it up unless I'm traveling. I go back to books.
Exactly, me too.
There's something about holding a book and recognizing the cover of a book that's very, very
The
special.
studies show that young readers especially still prefer to read print rather than digital.
It makes sense to me. I like to, they're my own books. I like to annotate. I like to go back. I do Post-its. My books look like, they've been through the mill because of all the Post-its I put in them. But, a good reader wants to retain something they've read in the books, and you can only have it if it's a live book. So I use it for travel. I bought my grandchildren Kindles. They used it for about 3 weeks, and they went back to regular books. So
Now, some experts, of course, do say that children should be exposed as early as possible to both digital and print, but I have to see.
I think there's a time when
Yeah.
it's too young, motor coordination-wise, and I do think that we've reached a time in society where kids are more attached to machines than to people. So we have to balance that out.
Absolutely. Now, the Shepherd Guidance System, that sounds like a very ambitious plan. Tell us about that and tell us how that's been going.
Well, I think that partially it goes back to my own education experience. I am the first in my family to go to college. My parents were immigrants. They had never obviously gone to college, but also they didn't know how to even begin to navigate the whole college process. So if it wasn't that a particular teacher had really taken an interest in me and helped me redirect my high school experience, I never would be where I am today. So keeping that in mind, we picked 2 districts in the city, District 7 and District 23, where we're actually assigning either a guidance counselor or a social worker to 100 families.
Okay,
And
so
they
that's the ratio.
follow those students starting in 6th grade right through 12th grade. Now, it may be a different one once they get to high school, but those kids will be followed as a family. So let's say in 6th grade, the conversation is around, are you saving enough money to go to college? What do you think you may want to be? Are you taking the right courses? Is the family in crisis? Are you in a temporary shelter? Does that keep you from coming to school? The shepherd is there to do more than just one-on-one, but what do you as a family need? We see that maybe in one of the schools I went to, the principal said his chronic absenteeism has gone down dramatically since he had the single shepherd, because that's the person who's going to call you in the morning and say, by the way, I hope to see you in school today. So there's a lot of issues that keep some of our kids from going on to college. So our single shepherd initiative is, how do we fill the gap for families that did not have this opportunity, and make sure that we help them all the way along the way.
That sounds wonderful. Now, the other thing is you've been very in favor of sharing best practices. And I know that you've been working on a kind of district charter partnership. Tell us about that.
Well, this
and
is
what
about
schools are selected to be part of that.
Well, they almost self-select. We put out applications, and particularly those that are co-located. We really want to make sure that co-located schools have opportunities to talk to each other and not just see each other in competition.
So those are the schools that are sharing a building.
Right.
Co-located.
But for example, I may have a wonderful after-school program, or I have a very innovative way to teach math. But if I want to learn what you're doing and you can learn something from what I'm doing, why not? I was in a school today where they actually share a parent coordinator. 2 schools in a building are sharing a parent. There's a charter school and a public school that are sharing an AP. Not one of them has enough money for some positions, so sharing positions works. I think also we need to lower the temperature on us versus them. And the more we become them, all of us together, I think the better it is. So that's partially why we did that as well.
Have the Success Academy charters been part of that sharing conversation?
It's an application process, but I think it's again, it's up to the principal, and I think 1 or 2 may have applied.
All right, because I know we don't base everything on scores, but they do have some impressive scores, and I'm always interested in hearing how they do that.
We always look for success, no pun intended.
I did once meet with a principal in the Bronx who felt that because he wasn't in a high-performing school, even though he had had great success, that people weren't interested in what he had to say. And that really resonated with me because I understood where he was coming from. He felt he'd done a lot of wonderful things, but the scores were not as high. Would someone like that, with that kind of school that had a success, be able to be a part of sharing the best practices?
Absolutely. Our Learning Partners program doesn't look at school scores overall. What we do look at, strong leadership. A good principal tops everything in my book. Enough successful teachers in the building where teacher retention is obviously a mark of success. If you have a turnover rate of 40 teachers, something's not right. And the other thing is we're looking for progress. We're looking to see, one of our top schools, Learning Partner School, is a school that is not strongly high up there, but every practice in that building in District 7 is outstanding. So we're looking for successful practices. I love people who think outside the box, and people who are also willing to open their school and share. You know, we've gone through a lot of cycles in the Department of Education where if you had a good idea, you kept it to yourself, because if someone else took it, it might lower how you were viewed. I see just the opposite. The more you share, the more you give your stuff away, the better you are. If you've done something well in your school and it can't be replicated somewhere else, then it's not so great. If it can be replicated, then you're on to something.
I want to segue from that idea of sharing best practices to teachers sharing in a professional development environment, because I know one of the things you're also very concerned about is preparing high-quality teachers, because so much of learning is the result of what happens in the classroom. So what would you like to see in terms of the ongoing professional development for our teachers?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, I'd like to see more of the professional development being done by teachers for teachers.
Okay.
When we did workshops recently for principals, all the workshops were led by other principals. When we did it for teachers, they were all led by other teachers. So having teacher leaders lead teachers, teachers who take on ownership of whatever it is they do well and open their classroom. In the Learning Partners program, part of the program is picking at least 3 teachers in your school that will teach less classes, but will then visit other schools, will have other people come visit them to see the best practices. And be prepared to answer questions, because if I'm a lead teacher in a school and I'm working with gifted students, for example, and someone comes in and says, well, I only have L kids. Well, strategies that work with gifted work with Ls as well.
What do you think of like the Finnish models and the Japanese models, where the teachers really meet every day and they collaborate, they look at their lesson plans, and those they get together based on the grade that they're teaching rather than a school-wide PD.
Well, I think that that's what we're trying to do with the Monday.
Urban Assembly of Applied Math and Science is doing that. I would be remiss not to mention that. So.
No, and Richard Kahn would never forgive you. But the other piece is that we are doing Japanese lesson plan in many of our schools, particularly high schools. And in terms of the Finnish model, I think what you have in Finland, that hopefully we're moving in that direction, is to raise the respect and dignity of teachers. To me, that's crucial for success. And that's something we've been working on. Everything we've done here, when I visit schools, the school I visited today, I found 2 teachers that I'm going to give major compliments to. One has only been working a week and a half. And already she's made a difference in her classroom. And I asked the kids in the class to say what they like about her. And one of the students said, you know, she lets us do-overs. And I said, she lets you what? What's a do-over? She says, if you come in and you have the wrong answer, she gives you time to think about it. And at the end of the lesson, she says, did you think about it? How would you do that over? This, to me, are the kinds of teachers we need to celebrate, and she's brand new.
Reflective practice.
But
that's really thinking about what you're doing.
And this is what we need to celebrate, but also celebrate the teaching as a profession.
As a craft, would you say?
As a craft, definitely. Is something that everyone should be aspiring to. One of my concerns in this job is where the future teacher is going to come from. And I've been asking every school I go to and every principal's conference that I do, develop future teachers clubs in your schools. High schools should have a future teachers club that works with middle schools. Middle schools should have future that works with elementary schools. We need to prepare the teachers of tomorrow, not when they're in college, but they need to see the pleasure of working with teaching something to somebody else, so they'll want to become teachers.
But I think, as you said, there has to be more respect given teachers as a
Absolutely.
profession, and in terms of pay. We recently reported in our program that teacher pay for people doing comparable jobs, teachers get paid a lot less. I believe they're at a minus 15% wage gap. So if that's the case, then it is going to be very hard, I think, to attract people who might look for other options. So I'm hoping.
I think also you reach a point where there are a lot of options. I mean, when I went into teaching, for women, there were limited options.
Of course. They're not so
But
limited.
I do think now people who fall in love with teaching, we have also allowed them to have an awful lot of other opportunities. There were no teacher leaders when I was a teacher, no master teachers the way we have now. So we've given teachers a lot of opportunities, and I think that the respect factor is crucial. A lot of celebration of teachers, a lot of shouting out teachers who do extra good work. And last year when we had our teacher celebration, instead of bringing everybody here, we went to visit them in their schools and surprised them. They didn't know they were being awarded. We took balloons, we took people, and the joy that they all had was about, this is a job I love doing, but we need to let the rest of the world know this is how we view this profession.
In terms of your own English language learning experience, you've spoken about it frequently. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like for you being an English language learner and what you would like to see happen for our students now who are English language learners?
Well, I didn't think I was really an English language learner until I went to school.
Right.
In my home, everybody spoke Spanish.
Spoke like you, as you did, right?
And all our relatives were Spanish, and all my neighbors were Spanish, so I thought this was great. And then I went to school. And at that time, there weren't that many immigrant families, and the teacher was not very pleasant and welcoming, to say the least. And she put immigrants in some kind of lower category. And I wouldn't say it scarred me for the rest of my life, but it certainly made me very conscious of what it was important to make sure that students like me felt valued. And the most important thing was that my father was a very strong advocate for education. I would come home from school and said, my teacher said, he says, only believe 50% of what your teacher said. Let me tell you what the truth is.
My parents used to say that about the newspaper.
Well, you know, he had come from Spain at a very difficult time, so he was really kind of a very avant-garde thinker. And it's like, but he also went to school to kind of point out to the teachers what they could do differently. And I have to say, I really feel ultimately I got a great education. But it's not just your language, it's your culture. There are certain things you take to school with you that are culturally part of who you are, and those have to be respected also. So I think certainly the 2 new holidays that we put in place here as part of our equity and excellence also. If you have a large Muslim population, you have a large Chinese population that celebrates, and not just Chinese Lunar New Year, and recognizing those as part of our issues of equity, I think that's very important, and that says a lot to a family about the public school system.
Do you think Americans overall are too monolingual? I mean, aside from having students learn English, what about English speakers learning another language?
Well, if I could take a magic wand, I would make everybody speak at least 2 or 3 languages. If you leave this country and go to Europe, no one speaks less than 2, and most speak 3. And again, it's not about another language, it's about showing respect for another country that has another language. So when I go to Europe and I used to take my grandchildren before this job, he said, Abuela, we think differently. We were in Spain, right? I said, absolutely. Right. We eat for 2 hours. We talk differently. We do different kinds of fun things. Our fun things there tend to be more family oriented. But I do think the more languages you speak, the more you are almost forced to be part of another person's culture. And I think that's really, really important.
I want to take a look at some of the challenges that might be coming ahead. You certainly are doing so much good work and it's going well. We have a president-elect who is put into place, potentially a Secretary of Education, who does not really believe in public education. She's a strong charter advocate, and both she and the president have been speaking out against the Common Core. So what do you see as some of the implications of that?
Well, I think the most important thing is for me to stay focused on the work and be successful at it. If we keep showing progress, how do you argue with success? And by every measure, our reading scores have improved, our math scores are moving in the right direction. Certainly, I think we have some of the best principals in this country, in this city. So I think we need to prove that we can do it our way. As Frank Sinatra, my favorite singer, says, my way. So I plan on staying focused on my way. I really feel also that we've gone a long way, particularly in the last year, to work more cooperatively with charters. And I think charters, there are some good and there are some that could be better, the same as ours. But I do think that staying focused on the work and making sure that we understand that New York City is very resilient. We're really good at what we do. And we're also good at standing up for what we believe in. So I am actually seeing the glass half full, and I plan on staying on this course.
In terms of the Common Core, if it were dismantled, what do you think might take its place?
First of all, I think Common Core is really just good instruction. And I would stay pretty much based on what we're doing now, because we already tweaked it to the way we think it should be done in New York City. It's not exactly the way it was 3 years ago. So to me, look, good writing skills, math skills that really increase critical thinking, having a real strong social studies. I mean, social studies is my passion, and teaching that well so we grow citizens that are ready for democracy, I think is all important. So I don't see a big shift in the materials, independent reading, learning to read. This is all just good instruction. It's what I did when I was a teacher, no differently than what I'm doing as chancellor.
We're running out of time, so I just want to ask you quickly, if there is no ideal school, how would you answer the best schools should include? What would you want to just see in the best schools, if not
the best
ideal?
schools, really a community feeling. Everyone invested in the success of the school, not just the leader, but the teachers, the parents, and the kids. And schools that promote kids who are ready to go towards independence. No parent should want their child living at home forever. So you want a child who feels self-confident and is poised because they have everything they need in their toolkit to be successful.
Has there been anything about this job that surprised you in spite of all the experience that you brought to it?
I would say how many things I can fit in a day that I never thought I could do in one day. And today's a prime example of that. I'm going from 7:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night, and no back-to-back meetings are exactly the same. So I think having to change direction on a regular basis every 2 minutes has really been a challenge. But I've learned a lot too.
What's the key thing you learned?
I think to be more patient, and that sometimes if you want something to happen quickly, you have to do it slowly.
That's the lesson that I can learn. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Chancellor Carmen Fariña. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. While our conversation with Chancellor Fariña covered many topics, there wasn't enough time to examine some other important issues facing the DOE. Some of these have been examined in previous EdCasts, and others will be addressed in future episodes. One major concern is diversifying New York City's school system. It is one of the most racially segregated in the country. The DOE is committed to improving the diversity of the city schools, and we will be following up on this. Another troubling topic is the large numbers of minority students who get suspended or even expelled from schools due to behavior issues. To address this, a number of city schools are using principles of restorative justice in order to remediate disputes. EdCast examined the use of restorative justice at the Edward A. Reynolds Westside High School and the James Baldwin School in Chelsea. We hope to take another look at the expansion of the program and evaluate its success. The DOE is also facing challenges in turning around struggling schools. In an effort not to close them, they have been designated as renewal schools and provided with more services to meet performance goals. EdCast will be examining the success of this program. In our conversation, Chancellor Fariña updated the progress made in ensuring that all second graders can read. The 21st century requires all kinds of literacies. A recent study reported that most young people are unable to evaluate what they read online and cannot discern fact from fiction on the internet. Digital natives are not necessarily digitally literate. Our classrooms need to address ways of making students more savvy consumers of online information. The recent presidential election was a reminder of the importance of civics education. In order to participate in a democracy, citizens need to understand how government works and appreciate issues of civic importance. An upcoming EdCast will examine some social studies curricula already in place to foster those skills needed to have an informed electorate. Before signing off, we'd like to call attention to our new graphics and give thanks to the folks who helped create them. The EdCast logo and titles were designed by Corey Paniagua, a student at Hostos Community College. Corey and his classmates worked under the guidance of their instructor, David Langton, of the Langton Creative Group. Final rendering of the graphics was provided by Veneta Palagacheva, and music was composed by David Stevens. Many thanks to all for their assistance in designing our new look. See you next time on EdCast. That's it for this edition of EdCast. Till next time, class dismissed.
Oh, good.
Okay. That's how we end. Thank you so much.
No, this is my pleasure. I love talking about my job.